You cannot put, this is what we're here for, the family unit, and it's just falling apart in front of our eyes. You have to make the effort. You have to. And if you're not prepared to, then you're putting yourself in a very, very damaged group, healing group, people that have got to heal for the rest of their lives. I mean, divorce. Some people never get over divorce. Some people never recover from divorce. Yet there's these people that will come out of divorce and bounce from one person to the next and this and that, and they just don't seem to suffer. But some people take marriage so seriously that divorce is just such a loss that they never get over it. As I've discovered the hard way, it's only now, 7 years after I received my decree, Nissi, that I'm starting to realise the gravity of what I have done several years later. And this is what happens. If it has taken me this long for the seismic shock waves of divorce to really hit home, how are we warring couples expected to take an informed decision about separation when they are in the midst of the rows, the tension and the recrimination that so often accompany the death throes of a marriage? It's only now that I'm experiencing something akin to the 7-year itch of marriage, the 7-year ache of divorce, a regular recurrence of emotion I experienced at the recent wedding, a pang of regret for what is gone forever. You can't turn back from this stuff. Just doesn't seem like people know how to come back from this. There is much in my post-divorce life that I am grateful for and happy about. I've gained a new partner and 2 stepchildren, and our blended family is more harmonious than anyone could have expected. My ex-husband, who is a media consultant, has moved on to a perfectly ordered and elegant bachelor apartment and a social life with a series of ever younger girlfriends. And this is something that we need to be aware of, guys. As women get older, their dating pool becomes smaller. As men get older, and if you look after yourself, your dating pool becomes bigger. It's not ideal, but there's less opportunity for women as they get older and more opportunity for men, if you look after yourself, that is. That is the envy of his old married friends. On the surface, we have come through our split relatively unscathed, but however contented it might be with my new partner Robin, and he with me, we realise that our relationship is, well, somehow second best. And this is the part that creeps up on divorced people. Our true loyalties lie not with our new blended family, but with our own biological children and ex-partners from whom we both amicably divorced. And this is it, guys. You cannot beat the DNA, the biological reality of sharing and bringing children into this world under the umbrella and covenant of marriage. There's no way in which the underlying loyalties of that are forever destroyed. It's just not. I might be a little bit numb. I don't seem to care too much about the past, but I guess the first marriage with the kid, she still comes and goes, and she'll clean the house for money and swim in the pool here, but the second marriage, because there's no biological children, just didn't work out because of her children, and I couldn't care less, to be honest. It's, these people make decisions, let them make them. But it's a very, very important thing here, and this is what happens to a lot of guys that meet these women. In some cases, the biological father will come back to visit the children, and you'll catch the woman in bed with him in some cases, and that's a bit unfortunate, but there's always that bond between the biological parents of the children, and not in all cases, but in some. The important occasions in family life which I used to love, birthdays, Christmas and so on, are now difficult, trying times. So she's ended up with a bit of egg on her face. I wonder who this is. They are unsatisfactory no matter how hard we try, whether my partner and I attempt, as we have on several occasions, to unite our new and old lives or agree to simply be apart for the sake of our children. And this is what happens. Sometimes it's more convenient just to go to your side of the family and them go to their side of the family and just leave things separate. I don't go down to my partner's place that I'm with at the moment because her bond with the sons is a situation where I couldn't be bothered putting up with their rubbish. So it's best for me to be here and them to be there, and they're grown men anyway, so it makes no difference to me. And she's pretty good like this. She's standing up for herself and her relationship, so I've got to hand it to her, but whether that'll work out in the end, it's up to her. Now, for example, we spend Christmas apart, each ensconced with our children and ex-partners, which causes huge tension between us and has made us both dread the annual celebrations. Well, any wonder, because remember what I said about the biological parents? There's always that tendency to go and do something that you shouldn't. This says, still going strong, Jane admires women like Cheryl Cole who can get past their husband's infidelity for an enduring marriage. She didn't have infidelity, this woman. The fire just went out. When my husband and I parted, my view of divorce was simplistic. I believed in the notion of divorce as a clean break and imagined a fresh start would solve all my problems. Aha, this is where they go wrong. It wasn't a decision made lightly, but I had no idea of the true complexity of unravelling a life that had been led in tandem with someone else for more than 20 years. She walked out of a marriage of more than 20 years. It was the death of my parents within 6 months of each other in 2008 that was the catalyst for my change of heart. Well, again, see, they get trauma and then they just seem to make these silly decisions. Be aware of this, guys. At my father's funeral, my brother made a moving address about the formidable achievements of an extraordinary man. He concluded that the greatest achievement of all was his remarkable partnership of over 50 years with her mother. It says there, my mother. The fact that I had not been able to give my own children the security that I'd taken for granted shamed and upset me almost as much as the loss of my adored parents. And this is what happens to them, guys. Reality of integrity and conscientiousness and the valued ancient characteristics of fortitude and resilience. They let these things go and they end up, looking back with shame. My children had lost their parents when my husband and I divorced, but they had lost their family home and the continuity of family life that makes the journey from childhood to adulthood so much more comforting and secure. And at least she's put that in there because the children are the ones that suffer. It was at the funeral that I first experienced the feeling, part envy, part guilt and part regret, that has haunted me ever since. And again, here's another case where envy, guilt and regret have haunted this woman throughout the rest of her life because of the choice to make a divorce without substantial enough reason. With my new partner sympathetically sitting by my side and my ex-husband who shared so much of my family history and yet had somehow been edited out of it, not somehow, she made a choice to get rid of the guy. Standing in the gallery, I truly understood what I had lost. Too late now. And there have been countless other moments in the past year when I've experienced similar feelings. Last month I attended a dinner party thrown by a close female friend whose own marriage had shifted perilously close to the edge of divorce shortly after mine did, and this is what happens. They influence others, and others start to think the same way. This woman didn't fall into the trap. because her husband had an affair. Well, somehow this woman made it through even though her husband had an affair. And look, to be honest with you guys, there's a tendency in women to fight for a man who's had an affair. Maybe in some ways being too easy and too simple is much more dangerous than being, a bit of a charismatic man who can flare with the women. Not in a way to aggravate the woman, but just her knowing that other women are interested in you. Take that into account. At the time of my breakup, my view of other people's marriages was as skewed as my view of my own, and I viewed her reluctance to divorce in a cynical way because, see, these people that divorce, they don't want to be on their own in divorce. They want to take others with them. And here's a classic example of that. Imagining that her main motivation was her fear of losing her status as a married woman. No. Her motivation was to save the integrity of her family and herself. But I now see there was a much more selfless reason for her tenacity. Because a marriage, however imperfect, isn't just important in the happy moments of life, a child's graduation or wedding, for example, but also in the bad times. And this is where they miss it. Shortly after my friend and her errant husband were reunited, his lost high-flying city job, and he now admits that it would not have been possible for him to recover from that. They started a successful new business together without her love, he wouldn't have been able to do that without her love and support. Their relationship has changed. My friend admits that she is still wounded by his infidelity, but losing her trust in him for a time is nothing to what she would have lost had she gone ahead and got a divorce. And that woman sounds very sensible to me. Back then, I couldn't understand her ability to accept his behaviour. We can understand it. But now I have nothing but admiration for the way she was able to take a longer view of her own marriage and her own life and the lives of those around her. Indeed, I have a similar sense of admiration and envy for a handful of other still married friends whose relationships I had viewed somewhat cynically because they displayed such an open animosity towards each other. A good marriage, I now realise, is dependent upon the ability of both partners occasionally to be selfless and to compromise. It is, of course, ironic that divorce has strengthened my belief in marriage, but then the years haven't just changed my view of divorce, they have inevitably blurred my memory of the reasons for our split. And she regrets it, man. This has really taken a toll on her. Excuse me. Somewhere in my new home there is a large brown envelope filled with the reasons why we parted, duly noted down by lawyers. But the passage of time has made those mutually exasperating irritations seem petty, and 9 times out of 10, guys, they really are. In 2002, they were real and seemingly insurmountable. Had someone told me the truth about divorce and explained exactly how, in the years ahead, it would impact on my life, perhaps we would still be together. And there's the regret. And the ignorance. This is the thing, see, going into a marriage, it takes a part of you and commits a part of you that may never recover should you let yourself down and the others down that are bound to that marriage. There's an innate, instinctive part of our nature and character that, once committed to marriage, possibly may never fully recover from the impact of going through a divorce. It is impossible to go back, but at the same time, my divorce makes it difficult for me to move forward. Maybe one day my new partner and I will marry, but the impact of our breakups, he divorced several years before me, has so far prevented us from making a legal commitment to each other. And really, guys, when you get married, you're only marrying the government, because if the arse falls out of it, you don't just walk away from the woman. They've got the right to take what you own and what you've earned and other stuff from you. Our mutual fears that remarriage will somehow invalidate our original families, and his concerns about the financial loss he would endure should our marriage subsequently break down, make the notion of a wedding unlikely, and that's beautifully written. His concerns about the financial loss he would endure, not she would endure, he would endure, should our marriage subsequently break down, and that makes the notion of a wedding unlikely. She goes on, but my divorce hasn't just had a major impact on the likelihood of remarrying. I worry too that it has affected my children's view of marriage, and believe me, it would have. 100%. Absolutely 100%. Will the repercussions of my breakup, divorce, not only reverberate down the timeline of my life, but also the timelines of my children's lives? Absolutely 100%. My daughters were 19 and 22 when I divorced, and my son, who lives with me, was just 10. Several years on, my daughters are both much more focused on their careers. So here's something of the fruit that's come from that. They've focused on careers rather than wanting to be loving, supporting wives at that point. Their careers and their love lives, and show no sign of settling down in the way that my cousin Sally's daughter, several years younger, has done. This is the impact of it, see? The long-term effect of my divorce, then, may not only deny me the opportunity to be a bride again, and thus, in some way, legitimize my new relationships in the eyes of the world, but they also could prevent me from being the mother of the bride and ultimately a grandmother. And that's one of the consequences, isn't it? To paraphrase William Congreve's famous quote, divorced in haste, repent at leisure. Divorced in haste and repent at leisure. And there, my friends, is another horror story, absolute horror story of a woman making a terrible decision, and there they are, and dissolving her family. An absolute terrible decision. Now, guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Only takes a minute. They're climbing. The subscribers are great coming up. Like the video, share. Feel welcome to share. And thank you for joining me. It's so sad, isn't it? Let's just look at that again. This woman decided to divorce and ruin the family, and now lives with the consequences of it in the back of her mind for the rest of her life. This is Probrickie. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you on the next female horror story. Bye for now.